Hello, this is going to be a bit of a music theory lesson where I'm going to explain some aspects of chords and keys. There'll be two parts to the lesson. Part one, I'm going to talk about how to figure out what notes are in a major key. How do you know if a note should be called sharp or flat? Once you know the key, what are the main chords that are going to appear? And a little bit about how to identify the key by the key signature. And then in part two, we'll look at what are the notes that make up different types of chords and why are some chords exactly the same as other chords, even though they have different names. So you may know that there are 12 different notes in total, and a really good way to think about them visually is to imagine a clock face where there are 12 intervals around the circle. So we can write all the note names around the outside. A sharp, B. There's no sharp between B and C. C sharp, D, D sharp, E. There's no sharp between E and F. F sharp, G, G sharp, and then you're back to A, and it all starts again at a different octave. Now, those sharp notes can also be called flats because these notes all have two different names depending on which way you're approaching. If you were going up in pitch like we just were from a lower note, then you've sharpened that note. But if you're coming down from a higher pitch, then you've flattened that note. And they both end up meeting at exactly the same pitch in the middle. So it's just two different ways of describing the same thing. So I'm going to use this diagram to visually explain some of the concepts in music theory. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the major scale. This is the foundation that all the chord theory and everything else is based upon. And you're actually already pretty familiar with the musical pattern. You'd recognize it as do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. 7 different notes. And when you get to the 8th, it's the same as the first, just an octave higher. So we could number them. We could number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we have the whole octave. So whatever note you start on will be the name of that key, and then you'll have 8 notes in a major scale. But how do we know which 8 notes to choose when there are 12 different notes on our wheel in total? Well, this is the formula for how the notes are spaced apart, and it's actually worth getting familiar with. The gap between the first 2 notes is called a tone. And the gap between notes 2 and 3 is also a tone. The gap between notes 3 and 4 is a semitone. It's only half the distance. And then between 4 and 5 is a tone. Between 5 and 6 is a tone. Between 6 and 7 is a tone. And finally, between 7 and 8 is another semitone. So it might be worth trying to remember there's 2 tones and then there's 3 tones. It goes tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now the 12 marks around our clock are all semitones. So if you play a guitar or ukulele, they're all 1 fret each. If we start in our favourite key of C, that first note will be our root note. So that's the name of the key that we're in. And the second note's going to be a tone higher. So a tone is 2 semitones. So we're going to go to a D. And then from 2 to 3 is another tone. So that's an E. And now we have to go up a semitone. And that's going to take us to F because there's no sharps or flats between E and F. And then if we look across, it's got to go tone, 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 semitone. So that's G to A to B. And the last semitone is going to bring us back to C. So this weird looking seven-sided shape is a diagram of the major scale. And this particular one starts in C. And you'll notice it manages to skip every single sharp or flat, which is why it's often a favourite for piano players and musicians who are just starting out. It's all the white keys, no sharps or flats. Now, whenever you're looking at these scales, you'll find that the number next to each note is quite important. The major chords that you'll play in that key are always the 1, the 4, and the 5. So here you can see it's C, F, and G, which you'd know are the most common chords in the key of C. The 6th note is the relative minor. So here it would be A minor, which would be the most common minor. And an A minor chord is very similar to our root chord of C. There's only one note different between them, which is why it's called the relative minor. And then the number 2 and the number 3 are also common minor chords. So D minor and E minor are going to be pretty common in the key of C. Now this pattern is going to remain the same no matter what key we're in. So figuring out the notes of the major scale, you're also figuring out what chords you're likely to be playing. So let's go through and have a look at the notes in every other key. Starting in the key of A. It'll be a tone to B, a tone to C sharp, a semitone to D, a tone to E, a tone to F sharp, a tone to G sharp, and the semitone brings us back to A. It's exactly the same irregular shape, it's just been rotated around the circle so that it starts and ends on A. So you can see that the major chords in the key of A are going to be A, D, and E, and the relative minor is F sharp minor, and the two other main minors will be B minor and C sharp minor. But why did I call it a C sharp and not a D flat or a G flat and an A flat? Well, let's have a look if I did it that way. You'd see we'd get a D flat, but we'd also get a D, which is a bit confusing. And then further down, we'd get a G flat, we'd get an A flat, but we'd also get an A. So that's a bit confusing. And we don't have a C or an F in this version. So the D flat should really be a C sharp, and I could call that A flat a G sharp, but then we'd have a G flat and a G sharp, so that would be even more confusing. So we'll scrap that, and now we have all the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're not mixing up the sharps and flats, we're just choosing to stick with one, in this case, sharps. So we're going to make that the rule from now on, and we'll be able to figure out all the major scale notes in any key. So the next one would be, it'll be either an A sharp or a B flat. We'll figure that out. The first interval is going to be a tone to C, then a tone to D, a semitone to D sharp or E flat, a tone to F, a tone to G, a tone to A, and a semitone brings us back to the root note. If you look down the list, we're doubling up on the Ds and the As if we use sharps. So we'd better make everything flat, and then we've got all the letters. We'll call this the key of B flat. And the major chords are B flat, E flat, and F, and the minor chords are G minor, C minor, and D minor. In the key of B, we have a tone from B to C sharp or D flat, a tone to D sharp or E flat, a semitone to E, and then tone, tone, tone gives us F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, and A sharp or B flat, before coming back to B. So looking down that list, you can see the C has to be sharp, which makes D the sharp. And if we follow all the sharps, we get all the letters B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So this key is going to be all sharps. The major chords are B, E, and F sharp. And the minor chords are G sharp minor, C sharp minor, and D sharp minor. Right, we already know C, so let's do the next one after that. We'll start on either C sharp or D flat. And the first tone is D sharp or E flat, then F, and then a semitone is F sharp or G flat, and then G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, C, and a semitone back to the root note. Now looking down the list, the only E is the E flat. So I think we're going to have to make everything flat to get all the alphabetical letters. G flat, we get everything if we do that. So this will be the key of D flat. The major chords are D flat, G flat, and A flat. And the minor chords are B flat minor as the relative minor, E flat minor, and F minor. And the key of D is quite a common one. D to E, E to F sharp or G flat, semitone to G, and then A, B, C sharp or D flat, and back to D. You can see that we're going to need to use the sharps to make it work. So D, G, and A are the common major chords. B minor, E minor, and F sharp minor are the minors. The next one round starts on either D sharp or E flat. It'll be a tone to F, a tone to G, a semitone to G sharp or A flat. Looks like we're going to have to use flats. A tone to A sharp or B flat, a tone to C, a tone to D, and a semitone back to E flat, because we can see that that's only going to work with flats. Change it all to flats. This key has E flat, A flat, and B flat as the major chords, C minor, F minor, and G minor as the minors. The key of E, tone, tone, semitone, gives us F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, and A. And tone, 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 semitone gives us B, C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, and E. So these are all going to have to be sharp to avoid doubling up. So these are the notes. The major chords are E, A, and B, and the minors are C sharp minor, F sharp minor, and G sharp minor. Right, the key of F is also very popular. F to G, G to A semitone to either A sharp or B flat. I think you know it's a B flat. Then tone, tone, semitone gives us C, D, E, and F. So make it a B flat. The main chords are F, B flat, and C, and the minors are D minor, which is the relative minor to F, G minor, and A minor. Now if we start at F sharp or G flat, this one's going to be slightly odd. Tone, tone, semitone gives us G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, and then B. And tone, 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 semitone gives us C sharp or D flat, D sharp or E flat, and F. And then we come back to where we started. Now, we're going to make it sharps or flats. Let's try sharps. And notice that we've got a problem. We've got two Fs and no E. So if we try all flats, we've also got a problem. We've got two Bs and no C. So there's kind of a trick solution where we're going to accept both, but you have to, if you look at the bottom of the sharps column, instead of the F, I'm going to change it to an E sharp. And normally there's no such thing as an E sharp because that's just the same as an F. But technically it means the same thing. And we're going to fix the flats column the same way. Instead of the B, let's make that a C flat. And C doesn't usually have a flat, but that's the same thing. And it makes our scale work with 7 different letters. So this key could be either F sharp or G flat. They're essentially both the same, but they double up on their names. The major chords in F sharp are F sharp, B, and C sharp, and the minors are D sharp minor, G sharp minor, and A sharp minor. Or if it was in G flat, the chords are G flat, C flat, and D flat, and the minors are E flat minor, A flat minor, and B flat minor. I think you're most likely going to see this one as the key of F sharp because you see that odd note at the bottom there is the 7th one, and it's less often used as a chord. The next key is G. It's a much simpler one, a very common key. Tone, tone, semitone gives us A to B to C, and tone, 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 semitone, D to E to F sharp and G. So the major chords are G, C, and D, and the minors are E minor, A minor, and B minor. A lot of people know this key. And finally, we'll try the root note of either G sharp or A flat, tone, tone, semitone, we get A sharp or B flat, C, and C sharp or D flat, tone, 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 semitone, gives us D sharp or E flat, F, G, and back to the root, which is going to work if we make them all flats. So let's make it the key of A flat. The major chords are A flat, D flat, and E flat, and the minors are F minor, B flat minor, and C minor. And that is all of the 12 major scales. So the rule is that they contain all 7 note letters, and they're either all sharps or all flats. So I'll fill in all the keys here. You can see each column has the notes of the do, re, mi major scale. And if you look across, the numbers 1, 4, and 5 are the major chords, and the 2, 3, and 6 are the minors. Now underneath, I'm going to add up the number of either sharps or flats in each key. And you'll notice that they're all uniquely different. You can see the key with 0 sharps or flats is C. If there's 1 flat, it's the key of F. If there's 1 sharp, it's the key of G. If there are 2 flats in the key, it'll be B flat. And if there's 2 sharps in the key, it's D. 3 sharps is the key of A. 3 flats is the key of E flat. 4 sharps is E. 4 flats is A flat. 5 sharps is B, and 5 flats is D flat. And 6 sharps or flats is either F sharp or G flat. Remember, they're both the same key. It's just 2 different ways of naming it. It's also worth mentioning that we've just identified all the major keys, but each one has an equivalent minor key. It's the same as the relative minor. So just for an example, if I look at the key with 0 sharps or flats, we know it's the major key of C, but it could also be the minor key of A minor, which has the same notes and no sharps or flats. And as another example, if you look across at the major key of G, it's got 1 sharp, the F sharp, and you can see its relative minor is E minor, so we know that the minor key of E minor would also have 1 sharp, the F sharp. It would have the same notes. So every key has got a unique code, which is called the key signature. I'm not expecting anyone to memorize this. However, classically trained musicians do memorize these. What it means is just by knowing the number of sharps or flats, they know which key the song will be in. So if you ever look at a proper piece of music, the key signature is written at the side of the piece of music near the time signature, and all you do is count the sharps or the flats. So in this example there are 2 sharps, and if you can read music you'd know that it's telling you that all the Fs and Cs are sharp. But you don't need to know that, and without even seeing the rest of the song, we know that the key is going to be either D major or B minor because of this previous chart, which is the key that has 2 sharps. And we know by looking at the numbers there that the main chords are going to be D, G, A, and B minor, E minor, and F sharp minor. And we know all of that just from looking at the key signature. So, in part 1, we've covered the notes that are found in each major key. Remember, it's tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. We know whether a note should be called a sharp or a flat. The scale is either all sharps or all flats and contains all the note letters. We can work out the main chords that will be in a key, as the 1, 4, and the 5 will be the majors, and the 2, 3, and 6 will be the minors. And we understand how it's possible to work out a key just from the key signature, because every key has a unique number of sharps or flats. In part 2, I'll look at how we know what notes make different chords and why some chords are exactly the same as other chords, even though they've got different names. All right, see you then.